Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to bring you one of our favorite series. If we're being honest, this is episode 10, and we are discussing the fallout of the Royal Rumble and the WrestleMania build, if you will. Obviously, the focus of this podcast is going to be both Liv and Roman, who won their respective Royal Rumbles, but maybe a bit of other discussion as well as kind of how we see the WrestleMania card setting up. Not a fantasy booking per se, but just kind of how we feel about where things are headed, or at least appear to be headed. If you haven't seen one or heard one of these episodes before, essentially we just talk about one of our favorite things, and that is obviously wrestling, uncut, unmuted, and just kind of uncensored, off the top of our heads. So, KP, without further ado, should we go ahead and get into it?
Yeah, let's get started then. Let's talk some Royal Rumble and WrestleMania.
Yes, the best time of year. Even the casuals start to get involved, so we're hoping for the best. I thought it made sense to start off with what is the obvious point, and that is Roman. I think will be the shorter discussion of the two winners. Roman Reigns obviously having won the men's side and immediately challenging CM Punk for that World Heavyweight Championship and slamming the undisputed title in the meantime, because why not? KP, how are you feeling about that picture on the Roman and the World Heavyweight title picture side?
It's interesting because, yeah, like you said, there was a bit of a slam and a bit of a dig towards Drew McIntyre and his undisputed WWE Championship, which I find kind of strange because that's the same lineage as the title that Roman Reigns held for, what,
Mhm.
3 years or so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what they were thinking, making him say things like that. It's sort of like as a bit of a, slap in the face to what he'd achieved prior to, this whole situation with the OTC one now. But yeah, when it comes to CM Punk, I mean, logically, when Roman won the Rumble, I think it made sense for Roman to go after CM Punk because obviously their history going back to like last year, for example, with Paul Heyman and the build into
Yeah.
WrestleMania with Seth Rollins being part of that matchup. So I felt like there was unfinished business there, and obviously we've had like teasers in like War Games and such, for example, throughout like times here and there. So it was never a case of like I didn't expect him to choose CM Punk. That was what I expected. But like,
Yeah.
I kind of did salivate on the prospect of maybe Roman Reigns going one on one with Drew McIntyre. Um, this is a very different Roman Reigns. This isn't the Reigns that had his whole family with him, the Usos, Solo Sokoa, whoever else would show up and just try and cost his opponent the matches. So it would have been quite different. It would have been really cool to have seen Drew McIntyre go one on one with this version of Roman Reigns. But yeah, I don't know exactly if I agree as such with Drew and like what he said about basically this being the easy choice as such for Roman, to go after Punk. I think Drew said that he's a little bit frail and is one bad loss away from his career ending. So maybe it is something like that, and Roman sees this as an easier opportunity. But I'm
Yeah.
not going to dwell too much on that because I think it is more so about the the path between the two of them. But yeah, I don't think Roman hasn't held this version of the World Heavyweight Championship before, has he? So this would be a first time for him. So I guess maybe that's something that he wants to cross off of his list. As for what this means going into WrestleMania, the match's already set, already done, so the build is going to be a little bit here and
Yeah.
there, I guess, for the time being. Punk's gonna have to fill in time. We've seen Finn Balor around the situation. So it almost seems like very filler up until we get to Mania, which is a shame for people like Balor, because, realistically they stand no chance and it's not gonna happen for them. But yeah, I guess that's sort of one of the caveats with choosing your opponent so quickly.
Yeah, some great points. I think, first of all, being, starting off with the obvious and Roman winning the Rumble. I think we kind of hit this already on the reactions, but just to reiterate, didn't need the win.
Nah.
You could have put him in there, 2 months from now, and no one would have batted an eye. They'd been like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's Roman, it's Punk. Yeah, sure, let's do it. Um, you could have put someone else there, but we'll move on from there because that's obviously fantasy booking. We won't get into that. But to challenge CM Punk, I think, yeah, I think that does make the most sense. The two biggest names, fine. Um, yeah, I don't think Roman has held this particular title, and yeah, the irony truly is there, and I love that you brought that up. To slam the title that he made so big, for as long as he did. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen Roman and Drew as well. Now without the bloodline, I think that adds a pretty interesting dynamic. But then again, that would surely all but end the reign of Drew, which I don't want to see either. So um, yeah, I understand why they did this. I don't understand the way they slammed the undisputed title. But with that being said, I do love the rebuttal that Drew had on Friday. Uh, I think very few people could have rebutted quite as well as Drew does, and so I'm sure that was, at least I hope that was ran by him, and I think his was probably like, yeah, I can handle it. I can make it right on Friday, and I feel like he kind of did. Drew, one of the best at just kind of holding his own, so I really have no issues with that. But on that note, with this particular build, yeah, now we're let's see, 2 months and 10-ish days away from WrestleMania, and Roman being a part timer, I do worry how much we're going to see Roman. Obviously, is we don't see him very often. He didn't even show up to announce his declaration for the Royal Rumble. So yeah, here I am on a video, or I don't think it was a video package. I think it was just an image, right? Uh,
Sort of like a vignette
Roman Reigns.
style thing, I think it was, wouldn't
Oh,
it?
was it?
They
Okay,
just
okay,
showed like his past like Rumble stuff, and then they just put his
okay.
face on the screen saying, "Yeah, he's he's declared."
So
Madness.
yeah, a bit underwhelming, but yeah, I guess it's Roman Reigns. I don't understand. Royal Rumble has really gone away from that, and we won't go too far on that tangent either. But like, leave that to be a surprise if that's all you were going to do for it. Um, but regardless, won't get into that. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what they do with it. I think the first promo that they had obviously was very, very good.
It was,
Um,
yeah, that's true.
outside of the dig on the undisputed title. But on the other side of that undisputed title, it's kind of similar situation when you think about it. Obviously, we have the Cody and Jacob Fatu bet going around Drew. Um, that all but seems like the plan, at least in the big picture for Mania, and I think that would be a great contest as well. Um, this last Friday did a great job of showing up and showing out both Cody and Jacob and Drew actually. Um, but again, we're 2 months, 10 days out, and this next week we have both Jacob and Cody in a qualifier. So, any idea how that's going to shake out? They're gonna maybe eliminate each other, and yeah, any idea where that's headed?
See, I've been sort of like trying to think of this one through because it's a very confusing one. If you do go down the route of Cody and Jacob challenging for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania against Drew McIntyre, which seems to be the ever developing story over on
Mhm.
SmackDown at the moment, that means that one of them has to win the chamber at least. So it's going to have to be Cody or Jacob Fatu winning that triple threat match that's been announced. The other person being Sami Zayn in this contest as well,
Yeah,
who obviously we just saw lose quite, you know, convincingly in the end to Drew
yeah,
McIntyre at the Royal Rumble. I feel that you have to have one of them win that matchup and then win the chamber as a result if you're going to be going down that route. The problem that I
right,
have with that then is if you have a matchup that goes to a triple threat for the World Championship, this in this case being the WWE title at WrestleMania, does the person who then gets added as the tertiary person sort of devalue the fact that someone had to go through the Elimination Chamber to win that to earn their spot at WrestleMania? So whether that's Cody, whether
yeah,
that's Jacob Fatu, the other one that then would get added to it, if that was to be the case, hypothetically speaking, of course, um,
right,
does that sort of devalue that other person's chamber victory because they've just been added, like because they're part of this story, not because they've not because they've necessarily earned the right to be in the match, but because they're just sort of a bit part in what's happening up until this point. That for me is probably my biggest gripe. With what
yeah,
is happening, possibly could be happening. We don't have a guarantee yet. We're just theorizing. But if that
yeah,
were to be the case, is that a little bit of a taint?
yeah, yeah. I feel like it is. And so let's just play hypotheticals there. If Cody is to win, does Jacob get involved then by simply costing him or just attacking him? And then Cody and Drew are both like, well, let's add him anyways. It does seem a bit, you know, I can't make heads or tails of it. And you see the flip side of that too. If Jacob wins and then Cody gets involved, which would be very uncody like, but has more lately been showing heel sides. I feel like I've been saying that for like 6+ months now. But regardless, it doesn't make, I can't make sense of it. So I don't quite know where they're going with that. Maybe just Jacob and Cody have a brawl in between now and Mania, and that's how they get rid of the other person. Because I can't make heads or tails of how they get all three of those guys in there. Um, and it is funny too that you mentioned the Sammy bit because before the Rumble, I had thought it was all but we were going to see like a Benoit, Kofi Mania, Daniel Bryan esque run to the top, and that was going to be the Mania. That was going to be the big moment for Sammy. But after he got beat as he did at Rumble, now I'm sitting here thinking, well, remember where next Mania is? Are we having to wait a year and a half for that story? So that's where my head's kind of at ever since the Royal Rumble defeat. It feels like he took two steps back. So I that's kind of where my head's at on him. Uh, since you mentioned him as well, but yeah, I honestly I don't know. I feel like Cody versus Drew obviously makes sense. Fatu and Drew is I guess would work as well, but I just don't. Yeah, I can't understand how they're going to get all three of them in there. But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to really try and piece together at the moment. It's obviously that's what this is all about, right? We're theorizing, we're sort of like trying to figure out what could possibly be happening, and there are some definitely unclear and sort of grey areas, going into WrestleMania at the moment. That might sort of lead quite nicely into the women's division. What do you reckon about that one?
Yeah, this one is not as clear cut, and I think Liv winning. First of all, congratulations once again. I know we've hit that quite a few times already, but congratulations to her. Finally getting that big win. She was runner up quite a few times, so glad to see that for her. As far as her character and who she's going to challenge, her character is pretty annoying. I know that's the point. um, but it's almost a bit cringe. I don't love it, but it is what it is. To see who she challenges, obviously, that is the question now. I like the idea of Vaquer. I thought it made sense, um, but yeah, the women's world champion on Raw. I think that's where they're going. But when she visited Friday Night SmackDown and Jade Cargill with the women's world champion or WWE women's champion, I thought that raised some intrigue as well, but obviously they're both heels, so that probably won't be the likely option. The issue with the Vaquer situation is the Raquel situation, which I'm sure I've made it quite obvious, but I don't like that situation because Raquel looks like an idiot right now. The way she just got cost the match on Monday, and then on Friday she was like hyping her up like nothing had happened. So you're making her look kind of dumb there. It doesn't really match her character. And then Liv went on to say, something to the tune of, "Well, I have the elephant in the room," and then Raquel grabs it first. But then on that SmackDown side, and then you have Jordan Grace continuing to kind of step up to Jade, but then they were on the same team this Friday. KP, make heads or tails of it for us.
I mean, it's not easy. But what I will say, comparing the situation to that of Roman Reigns and his Rumble victory, because Liv Morgan just doesn't declare, literally the night after with the champion, it
Yeah,
sort of makes matches like Raquel Rodriguez and Stephanie Vaquer have a possibility that actually there could be a title change. I'm not saying
yeah,
there definitely necessarily would be, but like there's at least a possibility of it happening. And in this
yeah,
case, it makes sense because stablemate and the I feel like we've been talking about this for probably months, years now, but
yeah.
Judgment Day possibly splitting. Um,
Yep, yep,
it's always something we come back to. So with that, it sort of fits in quite nicely. So there is a possibility that maybe we see Raquel with a world title and it goes Liv and Raquel at Mania. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying it would be kind
yeah,
of cool if we did see it, and there's a possibility it genuinely could, so long as Liv doesn't announce, her opportunity for Mania at this point. With the whole SmackDown situation, yeah, that was kind of a little bit odd because we did, like you mentioned, the elephant in the room and stuff. That whole conversation was a bit weird. And literally, when Liv and Raquel were seen walking backstage towards the ring before that segment, I
yeah.
literally said, I was like, "Oh, so are we just pretending nothing happened on Monday or what now? Like, are we
Exactly,
okay?"
exactly.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
they were all happy and smiling and walking to the ring or whatever. So I was like,
Mhm.
"Okay, cool, yeah, then we're just gonna brush over that." But it clearly seems they're not because they both have something they want to say, but they're not quite able to get it out yet. So that makes me think that maybe we're going to get a little bit more, in the next few
Yeah,
weeks as to when that's going to be. Chamber qualifiers have already started. So, time
right.
is ticking until we realize, we haven't got any much time left. And a
Yep.
decision has to be made at some point soon, or else we're going to have I feel like this is me complaining, but it's not. Like I'm basically the point I'm trying to make here at the moment is the longer you do wait, the closer you get to the elimination chamber filling up. Therefore, you get to a closer position where those people are going to be fighting for an opportunity they don't know who they're going to have. So
Yep.
it is a. This is I think this is my main problem. I'm not necessarily one to always think like the chamber should dictate a number one contender. I feel like sometimes we could have a champion defending in the chamber, and that wouldn't be
Yeah.
a bad thing. So because they're in such a way at the moment, WWE, it makes it very easy to sort of predict it around certain situations once you get to a certain point. Back in previous years, we're going back a while now, sure, but in previous years, when the titles were on the line in the chamber, it wasn't as easy to predict when these declarations were going to take place and how they were going to as well, like who was going to be against and when they were going to happen and all that kind of stuff. There was a bit more thinking involved and a bit more theorizing. As for now,
Yeah.
we can do the theorizing early, but then we also get to find the answers out early, so it's not quite as
Yeah.
long a wait. So yeah, it is interesting. The whole Jade situation doesn't seem to have a lot of sort of smoke behind it at the moment. Obviously, Jordan Grace is the only real threat and credible challenger at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's just arrived from NXT, so I don't expect her to beat Jade Cargill on SmackDown because that match is announced for this week. But then, do they get a rematch at Mania because she's the only person left? I don't know. I honestly have no
Right.
idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really, really weird one.
Yeah. We've talked about quite a bit the lopsidedness in that of the SmackDown and the Raw side on the women's division. I really thought it was time, Raquel and Vaquer's match last week. I really felt like it was the time. Just felt like it was right. Everything was in, stars were aligning with Liv winning in that whole thing. No, I will say I don't think that Raquel and Liv quite has the Mania feel to it as much as Vaquer. But Vaquer's just, they built her up quite a bit. But I think that's a great opportunity for Raquel, who, I think even the people that the true non-believers of Raquel have noticed that she's made quite the improvement. So I think this is the best time to test those waters. Um, and just the fact that it's the Judgment Day, you could make it much bigger on the Mania stage with the whole Judgment Day implosion. If that's finally the step we are taking, which fingers crossed, because my goodness, I think, yeah, a year and a half, something like that, maybe even more, that we've been talking about that. But they always seem to right the ship and they go back and, still it is what it is. It's at least intriguing, I guess. But yeah, I think that's where they're going. And then what do you do with Vicaire? I don't really know. Maybe she goes for a mid card title. I wouldn't be mad at that. But then on the SmackDown side, yeah, Jordan Grace I would get no issues for me if she were to take the title from Jade, or if that was the Mania match, Jade and Jordan. No issues with that. Um, if you don't put them on there, who do you go with? Uh, well, I thought the Bliss and Charlotte thing implosion was all but a certainty as well. So if that's done by Mania, maybe you throw one of those in there against Jade. I think that could maybe work. Charlotte and Jade certainly does have a Mania feel to it. I think that's fair to say. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of where my head's at on that. As far as Elimination Chamber, I get both sides of it, whether you have the title in there or don't. I personally like not having it in there because then you have it very, paint by numbers. Whoever wins the Rumble, whoever wins the Chamber, those are your four qualifiers for the Mania main events. I like that kind of aspect to it. But on that same, other side of that same coin, if you have the title in the Chamber, well, then you have, a month and a half ish to build up whoever can be the next challenger. So you have plenty of time, I guess is the point I'm making. So yeah, I have no issues. I just I wish they would stop, like, as you mentioned before the match with Raquel and Liv, if it's one thing to have it to where she's not, everything's hunky dory, but it's another thing just be like, just have her not be like smiling and laughing, pretending nothing happened, like she wasn't just cost a title match. That's my biggest gripe on that bit. Um, just make it so it's not as obvious that she doesn't care, as opposed to pretending like it never happened. So like treat us like we are actually watching your product instead of not. So yeah, lots to sort out. Very interesting build. Yeah, I guess we'll wait and see. We got 3 full weeks to build the elimination chamber. That's pretty big. We don't usually get that for these PLEs. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing what they decide. Regardless, I'm sure we'll be in for some intriguing matchups, and maybe we'll have another, if we're being honest, episode to discuss it. Maybe after the chamber to see where we are, because we'll have a month and a half almost after the chamber to build for the WrestleMania season. So looking forward to that. What are you all thinking? Let us know in the comments below. Who do you think should win? Who do you think should go after what? Let us know. What are you thinking for the big picture for WrestleMania? We'd love to hear back from you. But for now, this has been the latest episode of The Push. And if we're being honest, episode number 10. We'll be back shortly with a WrestleMania Raw, SmackDown, and NXT recap per usual. But until then, we'll see you soon. Take care.